Well, we've been talking about transition. That has been I think something that's been blessing a lot of people. I think many of us are in transitions. I believe the world is in transition right now. I believe that, just the nature of what's going on in the time that we're in, there's things that are changing, but there's something I want to talk about in particular about when times are changing, how there's also changes in authority, in leadership, in government. There's changes in direction. There's changes in assignment, whether that be personal, relational, organizational, whatever it is. Whether, maybe you got a promotion. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, you know, you're meeting someone new. Wherever there's something new in your life. One of the basis of this series has literally been how, you know, when God is speaking to a people and he's telling them, listen, I'm getting ready to do a new thing. Do you not perceive it? And how something that I want to talk about today is the emphasis on do not consider the former things. Don't even consider the past. And that's so crucial in transition because when you're changing, remember I talked about how sometimes the brain interprets change as loss. And what I'm recognizing and why it's so important that you shouldn't consider the former things, especially when God is doing a new thing. There's something that people don't really talk about much, and I just want to touch on it just one more time, just briefly before I get into this new topic, on how your brain interprets change as loss. What I'm realizing now, a lot of what that comes with is guilt. There's a interesting pain. There's an interesting mourning feeling, and then what I'm recognizing is you're mourning loss of the old you. And that could look like old mindsets. That could look like old behaviors, old patterns, old habits that you're so used to living out of. You're so used to exhibiting. You're so used to walking in. You're so used to what's familiar. And when God is going about a transition in you, when God is changing you, when God is delivering you, when you're getting ready to walk a new path, when you're getting ready to grow in the calling of God that he has for your life. Like I heard it said by someone, and I want to further echo them because I'm in total agreement. Like when things are changing in your life, when you are really growing, especially in God, is when temptation to go backwards is at its highest. Your temptation to go back is so high when God is taking you further, when God is calling you somewhere different, when God is doing something new in your life. And I would love to sit here and talk to you guys about what I believe is going on in the world. But today I want to make this personal because I really want to help someone with forgetting the former things, forgetting the things behind you, forgetting old mindsets, forgetting old behaviors, forgetting old patterns, but how difficult that can be, but some motivation for you. And what I want to talk about today is boundaries. And I've talked about boundaries several times, and I believe it's a topic that is being adopted by not just our generation, but by older generations, even newer generations who probably got it down to a science at this point, where healthy boundaries are important. Boundaries are vital to relationships, in my opinion, personally. Boundaries are very critical. Boundaries are very, very pertinent. Boundaries is going to make or break a lot of your dealings relationally, romantically, occupationally. Everything comes down to the boundaries you have for your life, the restrictions you have in your life, the disciplines you have in your life. And for the sake of this conversation, I used to say, people always made it seem like boundaries is to keep people out of your life. But I believe the other truth is boundaries also really helps keep people in. My pastors are really good with boundaries. I know a lot of great leaders who are great with boundaries. I know a lot of great people around me that are great with boundaries. And what I've learned is boundaries gives you perspective. Boundaries help you really stay in your lane, okay? Stay in your place. know your role and play that role very well. It's when people disrespect, dishonor, ignore their boundaries, is when you start seeing issues. And two people can play a part in that. And something I want to talk about is what makes boundaries hard. Like, everybody wants boundaries, but what makes boundaries so hard to set? What makes sometimes even speaking about your boundaries so hard to say or get out of your mouth? What can be so crippling about just speaking? That's what I want to talk about. And I really believe I found one of the reasons why it's so difficult to not just set boundaries, but to sometimes even say or do what God is calling you to do. Even if that means you won't be able to be around certain people no more. If you feel like you may offend someone, you feel like it may hurt their feelings, or if it just is the most healthy option for you and you have to let certain people know, like, hey, this is what I'm getting ready to do. One of the things that I found is, and no one really talks about it, is the immediate guilt that comes after you've done something that is actually healthy for you. You've communicated a boundary that's healthy for you. You've communicated what you can and cannot do, and it's healthy for you. The thing that's going to save your life, it's going to protect you, it's going to keep you, it's going to inspire you. But sometimes life, and even in God, it requires you to tell that to people that you love and care about. And I talked about it before. These people are so used to sometimes hearing you say yes. And they've gotten so used to your yes that when it's the first time you say no, everyone's shocked. And you don't want to deal with that shock. You don't want to deal with the feeling of letting them down. You don't want to deal with the feeling of their narrative about you changing. And I've found that this can stop you from doing something that God is calling you to do. It's the immediate guilt that comes. I want to give you some ammo. I think about Jeremiah. I'm going to read it in 2 translations. You know, God is affirming Jeremiah, and I've talked about this several times. God is affirming Jeremiah. God is speaking over Jeremiah. God is commissioning Jeremiah. Jeremiah has a huge task. I mean, he has to literally, and we're about to see in the text, he has to speak before nations of people. He's got to prophesy before big people, important places that are dealing with all types of stuff. And here he comes with this message from God. And God is telling him, he says, listen, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. He said, before you were born, I set you apart. And I appointed you as my prophet to the nations. God is calling him. Watch this. This is Jeremiah's response, and he sounds like us. He says, "O sovereign Lord, I said I can't speak for you. I'm too young." And you can put your insecurity where you sometimes feel like you can't say what God told you to say or do what God called you to do. The Lord responds to him and says, "Don't say I'm too young, for you must go wherever I send you and say whatever I tell you." That's profound. Watch this. And don't be afraid of the people. Here's the ammo. Here's your momentum. This is what God says to Jeremiah. "And I will be with you, and I will protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken." And then the Lord reached out and touched my mouth and said, "Look, I have put my words in your mouth. Today I appoint you to stand up against nations and kingdoms. Some you must uproot and tear down, destroy, and overthrow. The flip side, others you must build up and plant." It's very critical. I would love to read the Amplified. It's my favorite, but I don't want to take up too much time. What I want to say is this. If God has given you something to say in this season, even if it's to people that you may feel afraid of. Another translation says, don't even pay attention to their faces, their hostile faces, their angry faces. A lot of people may be hard to talk to because of their outward appearance. And then you're already dealing with this guilt that you don't want to face after doing the thing you know you should do. So instead of, especially this year, instead of just saying yes when you want to say no, especially when God is calling you to do something different or say something different, promise me you remember that God is with you. And he will protect you. And that really is all that matters. You did what God told you to say. You went where God told you to go. Watch this. You're going to deal with the feelings of guilt because your brain is mourning loss. And that's the loss of the old you. The you that suppressed when you knew you should speak up. The you that's trying to win everybody's approval instead of focusing on how God sees you and the fact that God is with you and he'll take care of you. And I said previously, there are some people, after you say what you need to say, even if you feel like it's going to hurt their feelings, or if you feel like it's going to hurt them, or you feel like they're not going to want to be cool with you no more, they're not going to walk with you no more. There's some people that's going to respect you and they're going to stay. And it's going to be difficult because they're used to you saying yes, but they're going to stay. And then there are some, they actually were only rocking with you because you said yes. And it's going to be tough, but I need you to be okay with that. That season is over. Do not consider the former things. God's doing something new. Even if that's in the circle of friends, even if that's in some of your relationships. My pastor, Pastor Jason, he said, I'm going to do what God is calling me to do. No matter who that separates me from or who it unites me with. I'm going to do what God told me to do. And my pastor, Gail, his wife, she said something that to me is so profound. She said, I'm going to do and I'm going to say what God called me to do and say. And I'm going to leave all the consequences up to him. That's so profound. And she has these one-liners that just always bless me. She said, when someone is afraid to say something God told them to say, especially to a person, they have the fear of man, and I will always question their relationship with God. That's profound. That's heavy stuff, but it's true. And it has blessed me, it's challenged me to make me a better me, because I know that God has taken me a long way and has brought me a long way to making sure I speak up and I say what he's calling me to say. You're going to deal with the guilt. Just remember. It's more of an emotional thing, and it has no correlation to you being in the will of God or not. You said and did the right thing. And God is doing something so new, and I'm excited. I'm excited. Because a new us is emerging. As we grow in God, as we grow in the things of God, the more you practice, the more you obey God, you watch yourself become who you were called to be. And if you ever want to know who you're called to be, look at who you are when God is using you, when the anointing is upon you, the boldness that you see come. No. Pain told you you were shy. Pain made you suppress, but the Spirit of God will always reveal himself and manifest on you as boldness.